Welcome to Mikam Israel. In Parashat Korach, Hashem Yitbarach commands Moshe to place 12 wooden rods, one for each shevet, inside the Mishkan. By morning, only one had blossomed, Aharon's rod. But not only did it blossom, it budded, it flowered, and it bore ripe almonds. The message was clear. Aharon was chosen. But why all three stages, buds, blossoms, and then the fruit? Reb Simcha Sheps explains that this is Torah. In Torah, the journey is the destination. Each step, the confusion, the breakthrough, the unanswered question is part of the avodah. The bud matters just as much as the almond. Borei Olam didn't just validate Aharon, he validated the process. He validated every Jew who opens his sefer and just begins. That's the power of Torah. Not just the brilliance of the answer, but the beauty of the search, the holiness of the question, the sacred fire of effort. And sometimes that fire becomes real, and sometimes the truest sign of greatness is a boy crying over a sefer in a room where no one was watching. In the ancient city of Rabat, Morocco, a 12-year-old boy named Eliezer left his home to pursue exactly that kind of Torah. He traveled far from the comforts of his family to a modest yeshiva where the only focus was learning. The conditions were harsh. Food was sparse. His host family, they had good intentions, but little means. Eliezer looked not for comfort, he was seeking clarity. His every thought, every breath was driven by this same fire to understand Torah. Day after day, hunched over a Gemara, Eliezer would furrow his brow deep in concentration. The hours disappeared into the sugya. He wasn't intimidated by difficulty. In fact, the more complex the logic, the more it drew him in. But on one particular day, as he tackled a piercing brilliance of the Maharsha, he found himself stuck. Every angle he approached, every insight he tried, nothing would click. And haven't we all been there before? When the words swirl, but they won't settle. When the pages, they stare back blankly. When we whisper, let's just go weiter, go forward. It's a quiet surrender we all recognize. The moment when our soul wants to fight, but our mind says, not today. And yet, those are the moments that matter the most, because pushing through, trying then is where greatness begins. Night fell. The Beit Midrash slowly emptied and Eliezer sat alone. His stomach was aching, his hands were trembling, his eyes were red with exhaustion. But the hunger in his body was nothing compared to the ache in his soul. How can I think of food when I can't understand the Maharsha? Hours passed and frustration built. Finally, the tears came. He gripped the Gemara as if trying to pull the meaning out with his bare hands, but it was no use. He was 12, far from home and alone, and no Maharsha. In the quiet of the empty Beit Midrash, the door creaked open and an elderly man entered, simple in appearance, but kind in presence. Bachur, why are you crying? Eliezer hesitated, embarrassed. I can't understand the Maharsha. The man asked softly, so what if you don't understand it? Eliezer's eyes, they filled again. If I can't understand the Maharsha, how will I understand Tosafot? How will I ever really learn? Let's look at it together, the man told him gently. You already went over it so many times. What's one more? And so, too tired to argue, Eliezer let him in. The man made a small suggestion, a slight shift in the phrasing. Nothing grand, but suddenly it clicked. The fog lifted. The tangle became clear. The Maharsha opened up like a blossom in the spring. Eliezer looked up to thank the man, but he was gone. That night he returned home flooded with joy. He barely noticed the hunger in his belly, but even in his sleep, the dream continued. The man appeared once more, this time radiant and otherworldly. I am the Maharsha, he said. I saw your tears. And I went before the Kisei HaKavod and I begged Borei Olam to let me help you. Such is the power of tears shed for Torah. And with that, he was gone. Eliezer awoke with more than understanding. He awoke with a purpose. That boy would one day become Rabbi Eliezer Da'avila, the famed Mechaber of Magen Giburim. Because Torah is not just studied, it's wept over, it's dreamed of, and it's fought for. And when it is, even a simple almond branch can burst into bloom. Ladies and gentlemen, when Eliezer cried in that dim Beit Midrash, he thought he was alone, but Shemayim again was listening. And when the Maharsha stood beside him, glowing eternal, it wasn't just a dream, it was a revelation. Tears for Torah, they never fall in vain, because a neshama that burns for truth never burns alone. That's the secret of the almonds. The stick of Aharon didn't just sprout leaves, it blossomed almonds, fruit that comes faster than any other, because Torah, when planted with sincerity, can bloom with supernatural speed, even from a dry stick, even from a broken boy. Would you like to know what Kudsha Baruch Hu chooses? It's not brilliance, it's not speeches. He chooses the one who aches for Torah, the one who fights to understand, the one whose tears fall not for ego, but for yearning. And that means he chooses you. If you care, if you try, if you let that fire burn. Because in the end, it's not the one who knows the most, but the one who wants it most, who changes the world. Mika Amcha Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom and Mivorach.